crisis mode. I've noticed a lot in life that there's people that tend to live and work in crisis mode all the time. It's a very stressful place to be, and it's a very stressful person to be around. So living and working in crisis creates unnecessary stress and opportunities for mistakes, miscommunication, and conflict. So defining crisis, a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. We've all seen the Chicken Littles that every time something comes up, they're running around, the sky is falling, stressed out, upset, no matter what it is, and there seems to be no between them being asleep and there's a crisis. They're always in crisis mode. There's no like throttling it to a different level. And it's difficult to be around. You know you're in crisis mode when you allow the urgency of a situation to take your attention away from more important matters. You know, you and I talked earlier about when the Medicaid stuff happens. That's a distraction. It's urgent. There's nothing we can do in that moment. We don't want to take our eyes off the important stuff to handle something that we can't take care of right then. So it's urgent, and it's important, but it doesn't need to take our focus off of the things that we can do and the things that are still important, even though they're not quite as urgent. So you elevate situations to urgent that are not. You find yourself putting out fires all the time. So everything that comes across your desk, I've got a problem. This is an issue. You're that person that's always got a problem, always got an issue, and you feel like you're always putting out fires. When you focus on what ifs instead of what now, you're in crisis mode. If that's all you do is worry about what ifs, you're probably in crisis mode. When you stay stressed and upset when things are not going as planned, we were talking about OCD people and how they get so stressed out about the little things that are out of place and everything. Well, when you're so stressed and upset about those things because things aren't going quite as planned, you're in crisis mode. When you always feel impatient with how slowly everyone else is moving, we've had those days, right? Traffic. We all deal with the traffic. If you're stressing out all the time because people aren't moving fast enough to suit you and they need to hurry up and, oh my gosh, I got somewhere to be. Well, everyone has somewhere to be. Where you got to be might be important, but where they got to be is probably just as important. Exactly. Slow down, breathe. It's not going to be the end of the world if you're a few minutes late. Very rarely does being a few minutes late cause a huge tragedy. We don't drive ambulances, so I think we're good. Mm-hmm. You always feel impatient with how slowly everyone is moving. When others are tense and seem cautious or worn out when you communicate with them. So someone who's always in crisis mode, everyone around them starts to get real tense every time they come by because they're like, oh, what are you bringing me now? Oh, they're going to be stressing out about the coffee maker's broken. Oh, gosh. You know, oh, well, we got to look at another account that's really not a big deal and they think it is. And, you know, I've got all this work to do and they're bringing something that's just not a big deal. And it gets really stressful and hard to be around and hard to communicate with. I mean, those people are really difficult to communicate with because they're so up here, they get frustrated that you're down here. So they're trying to escalate you to meet their crisis mode. People tell you to calm down, to not worry so much, or to listen all the time. If people are telling you that all the time, you might want to take a step back and evaluate. You might be in crisis mode because that's how people are perceiving you, is that you're always tense, you're always upset, you're always heightened. You don't listen, because a lot of times when people are in crisis mode, they're so focused on what's going on in their head, they can't hear anything else that anyone's trying to tell them, and they can't even focus on a solution because they're so focused on the problem, right? Life and work feel out of control and overwhelming to you most of the time. The weight of the world is on your shoulders, and you have a frantic feeling or come across frantic to others. Those are all good indications you're in crisis mode. And I think everybody at some point has felt the weight of the world on their shoulders and like there's no one that can help them deal with what they're dealing with. It's too big of a deal. They've got to take care of it. They can't ask for help. No one's going to do it right. That is crisis mode. And it's unrealistic. You're not the only person that can take care of every problem. Very rarely are you the only person that can take care of every problem. So not trusting the people around you to help, that's not them not being capable. That's you not asking for help and not being capable to ask for help. That's crisis mode. and that causes a lot of problems. So, keys to not living in crisis mode. Do not let the little complainer run your day. The little complainer triggers crisis mode. Likes you to live in crisis mode, right? Because that gives it something to feed on, and the negativity to just roll around in your head and keep you there. It keeps you heightened. Call a huddle to get the right people in the room communicating. I've seen some good examples of this lately. When we have something happen, instead of getting in crisis mode and getting upset, we call a huddle and we talk about it, and we figure out it's not as big of a deal as we thought it was. We can handle this. We've got a plan. Crisis mode comes when we don't feel like we've got a plan, but if we're communicating with the right people and we're getting them in the room, we're going to get a plan. Involve people with authority and experience. So if you're having an issue, go to your manager, your supervisor, whoever has authority in the situation, or if it's at home, involve someone that has experience that can help you with it. Someone who's gone through it before, someone whose judgment you trust. Don't try to carry that on yourself without asking others for help. Even if it's just, how do I handle this situation? When issues arise, do not put a Band-Aid fix on them. Fix the issue and create a procedure to prevent the issue from coming up again. Not fixing it right the first time creates crisis mode over and over and over and gets us in that cycle. So taking the time to create a procedure or something in your life that prevents that from happening again is worth the time, because it'll keep you from going back there. It'll keep you from having that same issue over and over. Put procedures and policies in place to prevent mistakes. Take time to train instead of allowing poor performance to continue. So something I've seen with managers in the past is they get frustrated with someone's performance, and they keep making the same mistake over and over, and they just go back behind them and fix it instead of taking time to train the person to do it right. And that isn't just with managers, it's with coworkers. If you see someone making the same mistake over and over and you're not taking time to go say, hey, I keep catching this, let me show you what you're doing so that you can stop making that mistake, because you probably don't realize you're doing it. Most of the time they don't realize they're doing it, or they wouldn't keep making that mistake. People don't like to make mistakes. So take the time to show them the mistake that you found will keep it from continuing and keep you from having the crisis. Take that time. Communicate. Remember, half of communicating is listening. We don't communicate enough sometimes. We get frustrated with little things that if we just go tell somebody, it wouldn't be an issue. The paper towel's in the bathroom. I don't know how many people will walk out of the bathroom and complain there's no paper towels, and nobody goes and tells the person they can put paper towels in there. That cracks me up.
They just walk to the break room and dry their hands and go back to work.
Exactly.
Why do that?
Why do that? Because that causes a problem that's not necessary. And they're frustrated because they had to walk all the way to the break room to get the paper towels.
Or the air dry.
Yeah, and, that's a small one and it's funny, but we do it on big stuff too. We sit there and complain to ourselves, but we don't go to the people that can fix it, and we don't listen to other people, because sometimes what we think is an issue, when we listen to other people, they think it is too, and they're trying to get us to help them fix it, but we're not hearing it. So we need to listen as much as we talk and communicate clearly and all the time. Be willing to talk to other people and ask for help and tell them what's going on so they can help fix it. The billing team's great at coming to me when they have an issue with something and trying to get it fixed, and they may have to come to you 2-3 times, but they'll come to me because they know eventually it'll get taken care of and it's not on their plate anymore. It's not slowing them down anymore. So remember, taking a few steps back can gain you a lot of ground. So sometimes taking the steps back to train the right person to do the right job, or to take time to huddle and those kind of things, can gain you a lot of ground. I think people are sometimes scared to take a few minutes to think about things and talk about things and do stuff because it takes too much time. They just want to get it done with, but it keeps cycling back around that way. So take the time to do that. Like the interns are a great example. When we bring in the interns, it takes us a few hours or maybe even a day or two to train them to do the process they're going to be doing, but it takes a lot of work off of us when they do it. And it helps a lot in the team when they do it. It builds morale, and we really appreciate that help. But if we didn't take that step back to train them, we would just all be carrying that weight still. So take the time to step back and do the right steps to get the ground that you need. And don't look at it as a loss. Prioritize your time and attention. Realize when something is urgent but not important. So we went over all of that a while back in our training as far as the quadrants of what's important, what's urgent, what's not important, not urgent, and how we need to delegate those things. So we need to take the time to think about that in situations instead of letting it escalate to crisis mode. There's a lot of things that we're dealing with as a crisis that shouldn't even be on our plate. We should be taking it to the right people to handle, and we're not doing it because we're not taking time to really prioritize our time and attention. Okay? Take a few minutes to step back and think. Don't let others' heightened emotions push you into making rash decisions. It's the mob mentality. When someone else is going, oh, the sky is falling, everybody else is running behind them going, I think the sky is falling. And they just run with them, and they don't stop and go, okay, wait, the sky's really not falling. What are you talking about? And ask questions. They just run with it. So make sure when someone's coming to you like that, that you're the calm one. You're the stable one, that you're, okay, I don't see the sky falling. Tell me what's going on. Do I need to look out the window? What's going on? Make sure you're not letting their emotions take you away with them. Okay? Ask for help. Don't try to carry it all. Then get upset when it comes crashing down. I see this too many times. People try to carry it all on their shoulders. They get burned out. They get frustrated. They don't ask for help. And most of the time it's because they think that there's not help available, or they don't want to bother someone else. On our team, bother us. We want to help you. We want to make sure everything's getting done, because if you're trying to carry more than you can carry, it's not going to all get done. It's going to fall on someone else's desk eventually anyways. And it's going to be a bigger mess. So take the time to ask for the help. Even if maybe someone can't take it off of you, they can help you find a way to make it easier. They can maybe help you in the short term so it's not so overwhelming and you can get to a point where you're caught up and it gets better. But not unless you ask for help. And asking for help is really important, because then your team knows you trust them and respect them. And you might not have to ask for help next time, because they'll see you need help and they'll jump in, because they know you'll let them. But they're going to stop asking if you need help if you don't ever ask for help. Okay? So always ask for help if you need it. Don't try to carry it all. If it is your habit to live like this, recognize it and don't let it continue. When you feel that reaction coming, stop and ask yourself why, and is it appropriate? The answer is 99% of the time, no. When is it ever appropriate to run around screaming the sky is falling? I haven't seen an instance yet where the sky was actually falling, so never. So we need to take time to really look at ourselves in the mirror, have someone else give us feedback. Are we that crisis mode person? Are we the one that's always screaming, there's a wolf, there's a big bad wolf, what do I do when there's, a chihuahua?
Don't make fun of my wolf.
So make sure you can see it in yourself, or ask others, give me honest feedback, and be willing to accept the honest feedback. But call yourself out when you feel yourself going there. Understand you cannot control the world, but you can do your best to make a plan and work the plan. So OCD people, this is for you. I know OCD people have to have a plan. As high C's, we got to have a plan, right? And that's when we get in crisis mode, is when our plan's not going as planned. But there's always a plan for that. We've always got a plan for that. So when something comes up, don't just shut down and get frustrated. Just be ready to course correct as needed. And here's a plan. Y'all ready? I can write it down for you so you can keep it. Define the problem. Communicate with the right people about the issue. Identify the solution and implement the plan. Got a plan. No matter what happens, you've always got this plan.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Right? So OCD people, it's okay. We have a plan. So what's wrong with crisis mode? Why is it a big deal? It wears you down physically, emotionally, and mentally. We've talked about that. The stress over time destroys your system. It does lots and lots of damage. So we've got to protect ourselves from that. We've got to keep ourselves out of crisis mode, so we're not running ourselves into the ground over unimportant small things. It shows a lack of faith in others and in God. If we're calling ourselves Christian, if we're saying that we're religious and we have faith, we have to be willing to hand that over and stop putting ourselves in crisis mode when we say He's got it. We got to give it to Him and let Him have it. And we've got to trust our team and other people around us to help us and stop trying to carry it. When we do that, it shows a complete lack of faith in everybody. but ourselves. And that's a pretty big ego, to think that we're the only ones that can do everything. So it hurts relationships. People do not trust your judgment because you're always screaming the sky is falling. They're not going to believe you when you come with a real issue. They're going to be like, yeah, whatever. It's not a big deal. Until we don't have to medicate you, and then you're going to be like, okay, come back. It's a big deal. Okay. You make them feel tense and upset. People don't want to be around you when you're always the one stressing them out because you're always so heightened and upset about everything. When you're throwing screwdrivers because the screw didn't go in correctly because you were holding it wrong, no one wants to be around you when you've got tools. They are going to go inside and leave you alone. They avoid you. You know, you come in the room, they're probably going to go out the other exit because they don't want to feel that tense feeling that you bring with you. Okay, they do not feel you trust or respect them because you don't share the burden and you're not communicating with them. You're not even talking about the burden, let alone letting them help you with it. So they feel like you don't think much of them, so no one wants to be around that. And it creates conflict. If you're coming in screaming the sky is falling and someone is having another issue, they're going to get irritated with you because that's not nearly as big of a deal as this. I've got this stack I've got to get taken care of. Your problem is not that big of a deal. All your problems are a big deal, right? So it's going to cause conflict and people are going to get stressed out and frustrated with you. They're going to get short with you because you've been short with them. You know, it just creates a negative atmosphere, and that's what we want to get away from on our team. So we want to be sure we're not spending all our time in crisis mode. And you make mistakes and create an unproductive cycle. So when you're in crisis mode, you're more likely to make mistakes because you're trying to rush to fix it instead of taking time to do it right. And you're creating that cycle because you didn't fix it right, it's going to come back in another way or a bigger way. You lose perspective and become ineffective at life. You really have no perspective in life if you're spending all your time thinking everything's a crisis. Everything upsets you. Everything goes wrong. Oh, poor pitiful me. You know, whatever. You're going to be really ineffective at life if that's the attitude you've got. So, no one will follow you except maybe the lemmings. They might follow you over that cliff, but the rest of us, we're not following you. So, you become that person that others see as negative. You're no longer refreshing to anyone. You're the one sucking the life out of the whole team. That's why crisis mode is wrong. You know, and if you're wanting to be a leader, you want to be someone that people want to follow. You want to be someone that's refreshing to the group. You want to be someone that people trust and feel like you trust them mutually. So really pay attention and ask yourself, am I the one in crisis mode? Even if it's just temporarily. You know, I get in crisis mode sometimes, and I have to back up and go, wait a second. I'm going to be still for a minute. I'm just going to process for a minute and see how it goes, and gets me out of that mode. So tell me stuff. Oh, God.
Now, what if it's not you in crisis mode, but you notice coworkers in crisis?
Help them with the plan. Give them the plan. Say, okay, what's the problem? At the root of this, where is the problem? What can we do? Who do we need to talk to get this fixed? Identify the solution. Because sometimes they're heightened and it's not even a problem. It's just that their little complainer is taking full control, is in the driver's seat, and they're just complaining. They're just venting, but it's not really venting. It's just getting them more heightened.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
Anybody else?
There should be like a code word or something that they can relate to the person. Okay, right now you're in crisis mode, so you just need to tone it down. Just let's get together and work the plan.
How about wolf?
Yeah, that could be good. Well, I know because there's people that you deal with here at work or anywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
and if you have a close relationship like that, and you want to help them, so maybe something like that could help the other person be like, okay, this is where we need to work on, something like that.
Well, it tends to be the people that are in crisis mode are the ones that don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to know. They feel like everything's really important. Everything deserves that explanation point on the emails and everything. Right?
Urgent.
Mark is urgent.
Well, and, that brings up a point. Whenever I used to find myself in crisis mode a lot, it's not that I felt it was a big deal, but I had learned somewhere along the way that acting like it was got attention and got it fixed.
Got results quicker.
Right.
Right.
And that's where people get into that dysfunctional habit, is because they learn somewhere along the way. I mean, as babies we learn it. If I cry, I get held. So it just kind of goes with us into adulthood.
That is
If
so
I
true.
throw a fit, I get my way. People leave me alone, or I get what I want, and so that's really where it comes from. So, but the people that are really constantly doing that, they have a hard time listening to that. So if you got a close relationship and you can sit down and have that conversation, absolutely, and have a keyword, Chihuahua, Cool.
Muskrat.
Muskrat, yeah,
That was Danielle and I's.
muskrat. There you go.
In public, if I went off track, she'd go, Muskrat.
I like that. Anybody else? Jason, you like something?
Not today.
Not today.
I'm tired today.
You got the flannel on. You're feeling cozy.
Mhm.
Okay. How about Scott?
I always have stuff.
I know. That's fine.
So, what I like about this crisis mode training, how many of you took Financial Peace University with me? So two, so almost half. We need to probably start those classes again. So one of the things that I found to be genius way after the fact about why that course was so successful is that baby emergency fund, that first $1,000 baby emergency fund. And it's not so much that having $1,000 was that meaningful in the grand scheme of things, but what it did was it put buffer between you and crisis. And it gave you $1,000 worth of time and money to go, okay, what's my thought, what's my plan? For instance, when Danielle and I first started and we saved up, I think it was right at about $2,000 in that baby emergency fund, and it took us a year of cutting to finally get that money saved up. And then, of course, the car broke down. But what that allowed me to do is just go fix the car. I just fixed it. I didn't freak out about it. I didn't come to work freaking out about it. We had the cash. I just went and fixed the transmission, and what I didn't do is stress out at work, and I didn't go buy a new car and spend $50,000 when all I needed to spend was $1,800. And it was the first time that I saw the ability to not operate in crisis mode. And all it took was that little baby emergency fund to do that. So I think emergency funding is important on a personal level and in the company. We need to have an emergency fund so that when a Medicaid check doesn't come in, it's not a problem with the vendors and stuff like that. It's a bump, right? And it'll give us time to fill that emergency fund back up. The other one is cross-training. Cross-training is super important because if somebody gets sick or something happens, it allows us to implement a plan that's already been pre-thought out without everybody feeling overwhelmed and an issue. And cross-training is one of those things that's very important to implement because it takes time, right? It takes time and energy to implement cross-training, and you don't realize how important it is until there's a crisis. But if you're living from crisis to crisis, you never get cross-training implemented. The other one that I think that life support has done a good job of transitioning is group decision making. And not that it's a big democracy and we all decide, hey, as a group, this is what we're going to do. But it's more of, hey, this is a decision that needs to be made, and we go to the people that are touching the processes and we get input and we make a decision as a group. Because one of the things that I fell short with personally over the years was making decisions in crisis mode in my office when somebody comes in and saying, hey, this is an emergency, this is what we need to do. And we make a decision based off of my opinion, one person, and about 80% of the time it's the wrong decision, or it's implemented poorly. And so I think that's why the Bible says to seek wise counsel. It's not only going upwards to seek wise counsel, it's going down to the group and the people that are touching it, and the patients and those types of things to say, is this a right decision? And then my final, which I guess is more of an admission than anything, I always considered crisis mode to be kind of a drama queen type thing. And I thought, well, I'm no drama queen. But let me tell you what I am. And one thing that I struggle with being an adrenaline junkie. And I love the challenges, and I love being the head of that thing and pushing something through. And I love it. I love the adrenaline that comes with it. And I just, even if it seems like it's very uncomfortable at the time, it's something that I think at my core I kind of like, whether I like to admit it or not. And so when it comes to leading an organization, if you're not careful with that, you'll find yourself leading the team from one crisis to the next,